Final Fantasy XIV is
an emotional journey.
Charming.
What helped me grow and not be so scared of people.
Final Fantasy XIV is a magical adventure.
Where we scared the sprouts into thinking that Cape Westwind is a savage child.
To me, it's mostly how I see the friends I usually can't, whether they're overseas or just out of reach.
Final Fantasy XIV is life-changing.
Awe-inspiring.
It creates an experience that is precious beyond words.
A light in my life where I've found many great friends.
Final Fantasy XIV is worth every hour you put into it.
Immersive.
Emotional.
Where we can finally be close to our internet friends.
Final Fantasy XIV is my place of connection. It's where I've met so many wonderful people that would later become my friends, and I'm glad to call it home.
It's home.
It's home.
It's home.
It really feels like home.
It's home.
It's home.
It's home.
It's home.
It's my home, and where I belong the most.
Naoki Yoshida asked us to relay a very special message at the beginning of our coverage. We're still in the midst of the fight against COVID-19, which has continued for about 2 years now. Japan is also in a pretty tough situation. However, even in such adversity, medical practitioners around the world are working incredibly hard for our safety. They continue their fight against the virus, which is extremely straining both mentally and physically. It's because of their commendable efforts that we've been able to continue development, and we've been receiving messages of thanks from players around the world. They told us that they appreciate the opportunity to have fun through games as form of entertainment. Moreover, with Final Fantasy XIV as an MMORPG, they were also thankful to be able to meet friends remotely in-game. This has only been possible thanks to the immense support of everyone in the medical community, even if it's just through these opening remarks. Through this media tour, I'd very much like to express my gratitude to them. Thank you so much. Of course, even when looking at our own Warriors of Light, sure there are those of you who are medical practitioners yourself or involved in related fields. We'll carry on our fight in order to continue creating a game experience that you'll enjoy. As such, I would be so glad if you don't lose sight of hope as you work. It has almost been 2 years since I started my journey through Final Fantasy XIV. Experiencing the end of Stormblood, and only then to immediately play the new expansion was a dream to me. I've never expected to fall in love with an MMORPG again after I was so burned by my last one. But here we are! The great land of Eorzea, a game with 3 expansions under its belt, and a new one right around the corner. I was fortunate enough to be invited to the exclusive media tour to get a hands-on experience of the preview build itself and play some of the content, along with interviewing the director of the game, Naoki Yoshida himself. Truthfully, this is like a dream to me. This video will be split up in different categories since there is a lot to cover. But if you're here for specific things, let's say the new skills for Summoner perhaps, you can find the timestamps in the description. I will give a slight disclaimer as well that I will try my best to be as accurate as possible with the changes. I am not optimal in all classes, obviously, so I will probably make some mistakes, especially if you're a main of said class, which is why I included the tooltips for you guys to read. Here's the rundown of the video. First of all, we have the opening, which is playing right now. Then we have the media tour day, impressions and preparation. We have a class rundown that will go from tanks, healers, melee DPS, range DPS, to magic DPS. Then I will go over the new dungeon, which will be followed up with the interview for Yoshi-P. Then I will be doing an area show-off, and last but not least, I will be showcasing the male Viera a little bit. Other than that, I think I covered pretty much everything, so I hope you enjoy this video. The media tour begins around 10:45 a.m., where we get to watch a 45-minute video presentation from producer Naoki Yoshida about general information on the upcoming playable content and some minor details that have been shared previously in the live letter. Due to the media tour being after, they didn't have to fully explain every change that's coming to the classes and let us explore to our own heart's desire. After the video, we are all invited for Parsec, a program that I swear is made by wizards because of how little issues I experience using it. We get in and are immediately greeted by our very own Bunnyboys. We set ourselves up and we are ready to play. Except Except not really, because I ran into 2 issues almost immediately. Okay, so I have to do some explaining for a few people that will probably be confusing. I'm German, so I was in the European media tour team. The computers are located and set up over in England. I do not know if you've ever seen a German keyboard before, but the layout is pretty much the same for letters, but not for symbols. And also, for some reason, the Y and Z keys are switched. So the wonderful staff had to kick me out just to install German onto the computer so I could play. Bless them. I am so sorry. The second issue was that we couldn't implement our HUDs, so in a fit of panic, I opened up Final Fantasy XIV on another window and promptly screenshotted all of my hotbar setups, so I didn't have to sit there and fumble with my abilities too much. This process still took about 2 hours, and with a 6-hour time limit, that cuts deep. But once everything was done, I finally got to indulge in a hands-on experience that was the media tour build, and was absolutely stunned. Please remember that this is a preview build and that things are 100% going to change in the final build. Nothing here is final, especially Scholar. I'm going to start with the thing that most of you are probably here for, the classes. The rundown of this is going to be fairly simple. All classes will have their own timestamp in the video, which you can find thanks to the YouTube chapter system. I will also include the new tooltips along with the old ones next to each other so people can see the differences, because I may make mistakes and I'm not fully knowledgeable in each class, but I will try my best. I will also only cover things that have changed, not abilities that are the same or minor potency changes to stop from padding it too long. We are starting with the tanks, going to the healers, then the melee DPS, the range DPS, and lastly the magic DPS. Another thing to mention is that in general the overall combat is now different. Ranged attacks no longer break a combo, as well as the window of skills being active is now way wider than what we had before, making it much easier to weave skills and being outside of a hitbox without scramming to continue our combo in time. It seems that due to number squish, the potency of most combos and abilities has also been lowered. Firstly, we are dealing with Warrior, which is also my main class. The first major thing is that the Storm's Eye damage buff is now named Surging Tempest and has a new icon to accompany it. The Inner Release plus Berserk combo is probably the biggest change to Warrior, whereas the window of fitting Fell Cleaves no longer applies. Every Berserk / Inner Release grants 3 stacks that you can use over the course of 30 seconds. So if you really wanted to, you could hold your stack usage when disengaging from a target and continue once back in. The extension from the damage buff is also now changed to 10 seconds increase instead of the previous 15 seconds. When it comes to the AoE combo, the most obvious change is that you can gain your damage buff Surging Tempest by completing the combo without having to do a solo Storm's Eye combo anymore, which will make it much easier when pulling in dungeons. Coming to the current defensive abilities, the first obvious one is that Raw Intuition is now the current Nascent Flash, taking over the properties and having a cure potency of 400 for each weapon skill successfully delivered. This means that it's no longer dependent on the damage dealt, but is based on a flat amount gained, putting the 20% to 10% reduced damage taken. Equilibrium also has a regen attached to it, which has a 200 cure potency over 15 seconds. Nascent Flash, on the other hand, is now like it originally was, as a pure off-tank ability, granting utility to the other party members and giving them not only Nascent Glint, which mitigates 10% damage, but also Stem the Flow, which is half the duration but adds another 10% damage mitigation, a 400 potency Heal Shield. This is one of the abilities mentioned where timing it correctly will be important to fully utilize the ability and grant an easier time absorbing damage. As seen from the job preview trailer, Onslaught and Upheaval do not require Beast Gauge, and can be used as OGCDs without worrying about its cost, especially Onslaught as it now has 3 total uses. Now we get to Warrior's new abilities. As the first new ability, we have Bloodwetting, which is the direct upgrade to Raw Intuition and is acquired at level 82. It is the personal use version of Nascent Flash and grants damage reduction and Stem the Flow to self in the same way, giving 10% damage mitigation for 8 seconds and another 10% damage mitigation for 4 seconds, along with a 400 heal potency shield. The second new ability is Orogeny. I don't know how to pronounce it. The AoE version of Upheaval, to which it also shares the recast timer, but no gauge. As the last ability, we have Primal Rend, which is gained at level 90 and is an ability that is usable every time inner release is used. This is a 700 potency hit on the first target and 70% less for remaining enemies that can be even used from a 20 yalm distance, so it can be used as a gap closer as well. It does not consume a stack from inner release and is also a guaranteed critical hit. Paladin didn't have too many changes to its skills, but as par for the course, just like all the other classes, the duration of active abilities has been increased in time. Now the Sword Oath stacks are increased from 15 seconds to 30 seconds, giving a much longer leeway for potential downtime. The important change has finally come to Requiescat Cat, where the damage no longer scales off of the MP as well as needing no specific amount of mana to activate. The duration of it has also increased to 30 seconds, but here's the weird part. Holy Spirit and Holy Circle now restore your own HP. If you have any reason to use Clemency now, I'm going to find you the next target and we will just talk. I'm joking. Maybe. Another drastically needed change is to Spirits Within, which no longer scales off of your maximum HP and has a flat potency now. When it comes to defensive abilities for Paladin, most haven't changed. Divine Veil only gained a HP restore with a potency of 400, while Clemency's cure potency was reduced to 1000. I know I said I wasn't going to go over minor potency changes, but I really thought the Clemency change was hilarious, so I want to bring attention to it. Intervention, on the other hand, has gotten the biggest change and is very close to Warrior's Nascent Flash, where damage reduction is the same, but is now granted an extra ability, which is Knight's Benediction on target that lasts 4 seconds. Grants another 10% damage mitigation and also gradually restores HP for 12 seconds. Why are tanks turning into healers? Now we get to move on to the new abilities, which I was actually looking forward to. First of all is the Sheltron upgrade into Holy Sheltron at level 82 that grants the solo buffs of Intervention, just like Bloodwedding is for Warrior, gaining a 4-second 10% damage buff Knight's Benediction, which gradually restores HP. Expiation is a new OGCD. Oh my god, how do you say this word? Expiation is a new OGCD for Paladin, restoring MP and is reliant on target's hit. An attack with a potency of 300 on the first target struck and 50% less on all remaining enemies. The last thing that Paladin gets is a new blade combo that is granted by Confiteor at level 90, which is the really cool big sword combo, which makes Paladin the cool kid around the block now thanks to Endwalker that everybody wants to be friends with. The combo activates every time Confiteor is used, which then turns into Blade of Faith, Blade of Truth, and finally into Blade of Valor. All three of these abilities share pretty much the same traits that Expiation has. How do you say this ability? Dealing the full damage to the first enemy hit and 50% to all remaining. All of these abilities also restore MP, our potency of 250, 350, and 420 respectively. Blade of Valor is the only exception, which gains a dot that can't be stacked with Goring Blade. This also has a 50% damage reduction for the rest of the enemies, as at the end of the combo it does not require you to immediately go into your Goring Blade combo either. These three skills are acquired with level 90. Gunbreaker's Gnashing Fang combo didn't get any major changes except that they no longer require their own spots on your hotbar, as its combo now works the same way as Continuation. Once used, Gnashing Fang turns into Savage Claw, which turns into Wicked Talon. You cannot assign a last two onto your bar, so it might take some getting used to, especially if you're accustomed to it. Personally, I thought pressing them in sequence felt a lot better. One of the biggest additions to Gunbreaker as seen in the Job Actions trailer is that Gunbreaker now has a total of 3 cartridges in their powder gauge, which Bloodfest was changed to give 3 charges instead of only 2, allowing Gunbreaker a higher immediate burst window and making it much easier to manage its cartridges, a well-deserved change to our resident blue DPS. When it comes to Gunbreaker as a whole, it was pretty much untouched. Aurora is now granted 2 full charges instead of 1, and Super Bullite's duration was upgraded to 10 seconds from its previous 8. As its first new ability, Gunbreaker joins the other tanks in getting an upgrade to their ability, in this case being Heart of Stone, turning into Heart of Corundum. This ability is by far the most interesting as it shares a trait with Scholar's Excogitation, where Catharsis of Conundrum is granted and restores HP when it falls below 50%. This lasts only for 4 seconds and also gives another 50% damage reduction, so timing this ability with a tank buster makes it useful for main tanking and off tanking as it's able to be used on yourself or on a party member. Gunbreaker's second new ability is Hyper Velocity, which is a new skill added to Continuation which activates from Burst Strike, giving it a combo action of 200 potency. This skill is unlocked with level 86. Last one on the agenda is Double Down, which is the new ability with the strangest recast time I've ever seen. This is the new skill unlocked at level 90 that uses 2 cartridges and deals a potency of 1200 damage to the first enemy and only 20% less for all remaining enemies. So it's actually a quite powerful ability. This might change, but we do not know. Lastly, we have Dark Knight. I was very surprised to see that it was very much untouched in most of its abilities, whereas the 2 most obvious changes are to Salted Earth, which now places by your feet instead of being placed manually, and to Delirium, which received the same treatment as Inner Release from Warrior, no longer being a tight window to fit as many GCDs as possible, but now granting 3 stacks that can be used over a course of 30 seconds. Dark Knight is the only tank that does not gain an upgrade to their existing mitigation, but instead is given a completely new skill to begin with, which is granted at level 82, as Oblation. This has a maximum charge of 2 and can be cast on either yourself or a party member and reduces damage taken by 10%. It also lasts 10 seconds and has a recharge of 60 seconds. Salted Earth also gets another upgrade at level 86, which is Salt and Darkness. It can be reactivated to deal extra damage to enemies standing within with a potency of 500. And as its last new ability, Dark Knight gets the ability Shadowbringer. Wholly fitting, even if in an expansion later. This is a new OGCD damage ability with a maximum charge of 2 that deals a potency of 600 damage for the first enemy hit and 50% less for all remaining enemies. You will start to realize that a lot of AoE abilities are pretty much the same from this point forward. This ability can be used while Darkseid is active, and it also directly affects Living Shadow, as your Simulacrum will execute Shadowbringers alongside you that deals a potency of 450 damage with 25% less for all remaining enemies. This was pretty much the rundown of all the new abilities and changes to the tanks. Obviously, the cross-class skills have not changed, at least so far, which means that we can now move on to the healers. Starting off with Scholar, we have some minor changes in its main healing and shielding abilities. Atlo now has a higher barrier, making the nullifying damage 180% instead of only 125. The same was done with Succor, where the barrier is now 160%. The only changes to any of the fairy abilities is that Fey Blessing can now be cast without using any of the fairy gauge. The Aetherflow usage has also been slightly altered, and I'm personally not sure how I feel about this one. Aetherflow does indeed now restore 20% of MP instead of its previous 10%, but this leaves energy drain to be changed where using it no longer restores MP, making it purely a damage and minimal heal ability. Art of War as well has its MP cost reduced from the previous 600 to 400. I will say again, these changes are not final and could very much be different once Endwalker is officially released. Scholar's first 2 new abilities are actually 2 upgrades to their solo and AoE abilities, turning Broil 3 into Broil 4 and Art of War into Art of War 2. These have a potency of 295 and 180 respectively that are gained at level 82. At level 83, Scholar gets the ability Protraction, which, well, it's Warrior's Thrill of Battle, except it can be cast on someone else now. It increases target max HP by 10%, which is also healed, and increases HP recovery by another 10%. As Scholar's last ability at level 90, we have Expedient, also known as... Apart from it being an in-battle Paladin, it also reduces damage taken by 10% for 20 seconds. I know a lot of people aren't too happy about this ability, but a 20-second damage mitigation is pretty big. Maybe this could also be changed down the line. We will just have to keep our eyes open. Astrologian has the most changes by far out of all of the healers, as both of its sects were removed due to it turning into a pure regen healer along with White Mage, as both Sage and Scholar are the designated shield healers. This means that Astro has been revamped quite a bit by removing and outright changing a lot of its abilities. Due to that change, almost all of Astro's abilities are regen specific, removing the nocturnal damage mitigation. So this counts towards Aspected Benefic, Aspected Helios, Celestial Opposition, and Collective Unconscious. Celestial Intersection is the only ability that has the diurnal effect as its constant instead of a regen, to which it also gains another charge to use. Neutral Sect still works the same way it used to for Aspected Benefic and Aspected Helios, giving it an increased shield of 250% and 125% respectively, but it does still increase healing magic potency by 20%. Even though the different sects are gone now, Neutral does still have the effects of both. When it comes to the card abilities, there were a few changes along with a level change on Minor Arcana. The first notable change is that when drawing a card, you gain the Clarifying Draw buff, which allows you to redraw the card but only once, since it removes Clarifying Draw upon use. Along with the MP Restore being pushed down to 5% from its previous 8, yet to balance it out, Draw now has a maximum charge of 2. Divination is no longer reliant on cards and is its own damage buff, which can be used by itself. It also sits at 6%, which was the previous 3 Seal type buff, which makes his ability much friendlier to use. Minor Arcana was shoved from level 50 up to level 70, and instead of turning a drawn card into Lord of Crowns and Lady of Crowns, it just stores one randomly, which can be played with the new ability Crown Play. With that, the effect of both Crown cards has also been changed. Lady is now an AoE heal with a cure potency of 400, while Lord is an AoE attack with a potency of 250. To balance out the change from Minor Arcana to level 70, a new ability named Astrologian is implemented. This is the new level 50 ability, and basically works like divination, except its effects only count towards yourself. Having 1 sign grants you Harmony of Spirit, 2 grants you Harmony of Body, and 3 grants you Harmony of Mind. On top of the other 2, Harmony of Spirit effect gradually restores your own MP with a potency of 60. Harmony of Body effect reduces spell cast time, recast time, and auto attack delay by 10%, and Harmony of Mind effect increases damage dealt and healing potency by 5. With the new 1 redraw system, it means that either Undraw will be used quite a bit, or it will be RNG reliant on which buffs you will receive. As the first 2 new abilities for Astro at level 82, they get an upgrade to their Malefic into Fall Malefic and Gravity into Gravity 2, which has a potency of 250 and 130 respectively. At level 86, Astro gains Exaltation, which has a cooldown of 60 seconds and is a 10% damage mitigation that can be cast on self or a party member. Once the effect ends, it also restores HP with a cure potency of 500. Lastly, at level 90, Astro gains the ability Macrocosmos, which deals a potency of 250 damage to the first enemy and 50% less to all remaining enemies, while also granting the buff Microcosm. This is somewhat similar to Horoscope, as it has to be reactivated for a heal, except that this time you have to take damage to compile the heal potency. Over the course of 15 seconds, it will compile 50% of all damage taken, and then at the end of the effect or reactivated, will heal that compiled amount. This has a 120-second recast timer. White Mage is by far the healer with the least changes to their current skills. With Fluid Aura being completely removed from its list, the next is Thin Air, as it no longer reduces the MP cost for all abilities to 0 for 12 seconds, now it applies to the next skill cast. On top of that, it also gains a second charge by having a maximum of 2. Divine Benison also receives a second charge, and that is pretty much all of the changes to White Mage. It really isn't that much. With its new abilities, White Mage gains an upgrade at level 82 to both Glare and Holy, which I think it's quite hilarious that we're just skipping Glare 2 and Holy 2. No, we're going straight to 3. 2 never existed. These are just regular higher potencies but are the same, with Holy 3 still having the stun effect, but it also doesn't look as blinding anymore. At level 86, White Mage gains the ability Aqua Veil, which can be cast on self or a party member and reduces the damage taken by 15%. As the level 90 ability, White Mage gains Lily Bell, which you could pretty much explain as a placeable healing turret. This grants 5 stacks of Lily Bell, and every time damage is taken, it will expend 1 stack that casts an AoE heal with a potency of 400. Due to the fact that this ability lasts 15 seconds, if there are any remaining stacks of Lilybell, it will trigger an additional healing effect, which is 200 potency for every remaining stack. Its recast is 180 seconds. Alright, before going into this, I have to remind everyone that this is not a guide. We only had a set amount of time to actually play the classes, and I am not very smart either, so someone else will probably do a way better job than I ever could. I will share every tooltip and try my best to explain it. I will not go over potencies and instead just show them on the tooltip, where this ability showcase will take way too long. First of all, we have to talk about the Sage Gauge. This is known as the Addersgall, which can pretty much be compared to White Mage Lilies. It fills up an Addersgall every 20 seconds, which then can be utilized for certain skills. First of all, we have the primary ability, Doses 1 to 3. This is the standard healer solo damage. Diagnosis is Sage's first solo healing ability. Then we got Cardia, which is basically Sage's version of Dance Partner, which heals the designated target after casting certain magic attacks. I had no Dance Partner and was by myself, so as Sage's AoE heal ability, we have Prognosis. Sage's Resurrect is Igero. I couldn't get any footage on that, I'm really sorry. Physis is a OGCD AoE heal tick that stays for 21 seconds and has a recast timer of 60 seconds. Phlegma 1, 2, and 3 is an ability that strikes the first enemy with full potency and 50% less for all remaining. This as well restores the HP of the person affected by your healer Dance Partner. This has a charge of 2. Now we come to the primary ability for Sage, known as Eucrasia. If you remember Dark Arts from Dark Knight, it's basically that, except for Sage now. Pressing this will upgrade Doses, Diagnosis, and Prognosis to the Eucrasian versions. Eucrasian Diagnosis is now a shield, which when crit erects an extra buff that adds additional damage mitigation for 180% of the HP restored. It is basically like Scholar's Galvanize. Eucrasian Prognosis is now an AoE shield, which erects a barrier of 320% of the HP restored. And Eucrasian Doses 3 turns into your damage over time while also restoring the HP of your partner. Soteria is a 10-second buff to your Cardian-based heals, which doubles its cure potency. This one is by far my favorite ability out of all of the healers. This is Icarus, which lets you rush to an enemy or party member's location. So yes, it is indeed a healer gap closer. As Sage's first gauge ability, we have Drocole, which restores a target's HP immediately. It also restores 5% of maximum MP and costs 1 Addersgall. Dyscrasia 2 is your spammable AoE attack, which doesn't only do damage, but also restores HP to targets that have Cardion. This is pretty big for dungeon pulls, as putting your partner on a tank and spamming this ability will gradually restore the tank's HP. Next up is Caracol, which is a 10% damage reduction for self and your party for 15 seconds. It also gives an additional regen effect, restores 5% of maximum MP, and costs 1 Addersgall. Ixocol is your AoE Durocol, which restores own HP and all nearby party members. Just like most of the other abilities, it restores 5% of maximum MP and also costs 1 Addersgall. Zoe is pretty much the single effect version of Soteria, where it doesn't up the healing potency for a timed amount, but only affects the next healing spell cast. This has a recast timer of 90 seconds, so if you are ever in a pinch, just use this ability to heal more. They're really killing me with these ability names. Next up, we have Pepsis, which is actually quite an interesting ability. You can use this to forfeit the applied Eucrasian abilities to get a cure potency for self or the entire party depending on which effect you forfeit. Now we have Physis 2, which is not an upgrade to Physis, but is its own ability as it has a recast of 180, which is a much higher heal dot for 15 seconds, which will also increase HP recovery by healing magic by 10%. Tauracol is the solo version of Caracol, which also restores AP and reduces the target's damage taken by 10% for 15 seconds. It costs 1 Addersgall and restores 5% of maximum HP. This can't be stacked with the effect of Caracol. Toxicon and Toxicon 2 are probably the weirdest abilities to figure out. While it mentions that it does full potency on the first target and 50% less on the others, it can only be activated by breaking the shield from Eucrasian Diagnosis, since instead of Addersgall, it uses Addersting instead. And Addersting is its own personal gauge. You can store up to 3 of them. Haima is a strategy ability as it has the same attributes of White Mage's Lilybell, giving self or target party member a barrier, which also grants 5 stacks of Himation, which lasts for 30 seconds seconds. Once the barrier is absorbed, it will grant a healing effect, which is a cure potency of 150. Panheima is the AoE version of this. Rizomata is an ability that grants you an immediate stack of Addersgall, which can be used every 90 seconds. Sage gets another ability at level 76, which doesn't require Addersgall but has a 60-second cooldown, which is just an AoE heal for the party. Second to last new ability for Sage is Krasis, which increases the healing recovery of self or a party member by 20% for 10 seconds and can be recast every 60 seconds. As Sage's last ability, it gains Pneuma, which is a really cool damage and healing laser. Just like many other abilities, it deals full damage to the first target hit and 50% less for all the remaining enemies, while at the same time restoring HP for nearby party members and reduces damage taken by 10% for 20 seconds. Additionally to this, the target with Cardion gains an extra heal on top of it. This can be cast every 120 seconds. This concludes Sage and all of its abilities and traits. It's a pretty busy healer, but I feel like it will be different and rather fun to play. Now we wait for the release of Endwalker to see people test it fully. With that, we can now move on to the DPS. So I will try my best to cover Monk, but I am going to be honest. I don't play it, and it is by far my least played class. I will try my best, but please do not take my word as law for this class. Monk mains, you scare me, and so do these changes. The first change is that two abilities are no longer with positionals, which are both the raptor form attacks. This will make executing combos not as rough and having to remember positionals for every single skill. The first important mention is that all three Fist abilities, Fist of Earth, Fist of Fire, and Fist of Wind, have been completely removed. In addition, Monk was given Riddle of Wind, which lets you punch really fast for 50 seconds. Just kidding, kind of. It reduces auto attack delay by 50%. Steel Peak and Howling Fist are now back in Monk's actions, as they were added to be early chakra spenders, which upgrade to Forbidden Chakra and Enlightenment. Instead of just being OGCD damage abilities, they are only executable with the effect of the 5th chakra. Shoulder Tackle has also been changed to Thunderclap, which has a maximum charge of 3 and lets you rush to a targeted enemy or a party member's location. Here we go to the new mechanic for monks, the Beast Chakra and the Nadis. As shown in the job trailer, there is now a new gauge that allows you to get different chakra types to execute different actions. These are entirely dependent on perfect balance, and the given chakras give either lunar or solar nadi. Here I will go down these new abilities and what they do. Perfect balance and Master Blitz go hand in hand. To receive a Beast Chakra, you will have to use perfect balance, of which you have 2 charges. They still do what is intended by letting you use 3 abilities without having to be in a form and granting the form bonuses. These also give you the designated chakras, Opo Chakra, Coral Chakra, Raptor Chakra. Jesus Christ, this is so hard to say. Depending on which chakras you gain, you get the ability to use the different ones that give you specific nadi to then let you use the finisher move. If you gain 3 of the same type of chakra, you will be able to use Elixir Field, which will also grant you a lunar nadi, now being tied to the chakra system instead of being an OGCD AoE. Next we have Flint Strike and Rising Phoenix. They are the same ability, except that Rising Phoenix is the upgraded version at level 86. This one can only be executed when all 3 chakras are different and gives you the second needed solar nadi. Celestial Revolution is the 3rd version that requires 2 chakras of the same type to be activated. This ability itself grants Formless Fist, which allows you to use a weapon skill without being in a form, as well as giving you whatever nadi you do not yet have. So if you have 1 solar nadi, it will give you 1 lunar nadi, and vice versa. Lastly, we have the 3 chakra and 2 nadi abilities, Tornado Kick and Phantom Rush. Phantom is a direct upgrade at level 90 and is the strongest attack from the chakras, which pretty much means you have to do 3 full rotations to be able to use it, but it also grants you Formless Fist. Most of the new abilities have been shown off in the chakra section. There is only one more left, that is Shadow of the Destroyer, which is a direct upgrade to Arm of the Destroyer. With that, we're already done with Monk. A few abilities for Dragoon were changed, since we no longer have to activate Blood of the Dragon, as it's now passive ability when you start battle and finish combos. Other than that, it's pretty much the same, except that Fang and Claw and Wheeling Thrust are in Draconian Fire instead of Ride and Thrust Ready, which can be used to execute Ride and Thrust. and the new ability Draconian Fury, which is the upgraded version of Doom Spike. When it comes to changes, Lance Charge's 15% was actually nerfed to 10%. Life Surge and Spine Shitter Dive both receive a second charge. Battle Litany is also only 15 seconds now, but the recast was reduced to 120 seconds from its previous 180. Heaven's Thrust is a new ability gain at level 86, which is a direct upgrade to Full Thrust with a higher potency that still leads to the Fang and Claw combo. Chaotic Spring is also a direct upgrade to Chaos Thrust, while still being a damage over time and leading into the Wheeling Thrust combo. As the level 90 ability, we have Whirlwind Thrust, which can only be activated if the first mind's focus is at 2, and you can only gain that by either using Raiden Thrust or Draconian Fury. To put it simply, to get both focus costs, you will need to do either 2 AoE combos or 2 full rotations of either Wheeling Thrust or Fang and Claw. This will gain you enough to use Whirlwind Thrust, and boy does it look cool. This attack deals the full potency of 370 to the first enemy and 50% less to all remaining enemies. As the first mentioned to Ninja's ability changes, Shadow Fang has been completely removed. There was also a slight move around with a Dream Within a Dream and Assassinate, as Assassinate is now a level 40 OGCD damage ability, but upgrades to Dream Within a Dream at level 56 that has a recast of 60 seconds and is a 3-fold attack. Along with that, a new ability with the name of Hura Ijin is added, which deals a potency of 200 but also grants Huton without having to use mudras. It also extends the effect of Huton by 30 seconds to a maximum of 60. Baba Kakura also gets a potency buff if under the effect of Misui. At level 82, Ninja gains the Phantom Kama Itachi ability, which can only be activated while Bushin is active, since it is basically a command to your shadow, which deals a potency of 550 to the first target and 50% less to remaining enemies. At level 90, Ninja gains Forked Raiju, which is an ability that can only be granted under the effect of Fleeting Raiju Ready. You can get this effect by using Raiton. Once Forked Raiju is used, you can immediately use Fleeting Raiju. The last ability granted is Hollow Nozuchi, which is an ability that affects Doton as it does additional damage bursts with a potency of 150% less once Hake Mujinsatsu is cast. Hey, so this is Future Shen with an update while I'm editing this. I realized I didn't press any of the new samurai abilities once, and I am an idiot, so I'm really sorry that you won't be able to see them, but I will still explain them. When it comes to samurai, we are already starting off with a few new changes. Third Eye no longer grants you eyes open, since the abilities Merciful Eyes and Hisatsu Saigon are now removed. Instead, when hit under the effect of Third Eye, the Kinky gauge increases by 10. When it comes to Meikyu Shisui and Tsubame Gaeshi, both receive a second charge to their abilities. Another thing is that all Kaishi abilities no longer give a stack of meditation, which means that before you can use Shoha, you will have to do another rotation to use Midare Setsugeka. When it comes to Samurai's new abilities, there is now an AoE version of Shoha as Shoha 2, which is obtained at level 82. At level 86, Samurai gets a new AoE ability that can be used after Fuga, which will give Setsu and increases the Kinky gauge by 10, now making all AoE abilities able to charge every sen. As its last ability, Samurai gains Oginami Kiri at level 90, which can only be executed by using Ikishoten, which can only be used every 120 seconds now. Oginami Kiri also has a Kaeshi version, which can be executed for a potency of 1,275% less for all remaining enemies. That pretty much sums up all changes for Samurai. You can also see that I'm an idiot and didn't actually press the button once. Reaper is the second of the new classes and is everything I've ever wanted. That's the closest to a Bloodborne we'll ever get. Everyone, get ready for your corruption arc. Also, the animations are Reaper is a very interesting class, since its entire system is increasing the soul gauge to use special soul abilities that then fuel your avatar to take over and grant you special damage abilities for a short time. I found this incredibly fun, even if I didn't get to play it in a dungeon to test out more, but I hope that you will have as much fun as I did with trying it out. Reaper relies on its double gauge system, which makes it quite interesting as it juggles 3 separate sets of abilities. It's a bit hard to explain, so we'll take it slow. As the main 3 combo abilities, we have Slice, Waxing Slice, and Infernal Slice, which do not have any positionals and increase your soul gauge by 30. Next up, we have the Teleport ability that was shown in the job trailer. This is actually a 3 combo that is super fun for no reason. Basically, you have Hell's Ingress and Hell's Egress, which send you forward and backwards respectively. Every time you cast either, it allows you to use the ability Harp without cast time, which is a long-range damage ability with 300 potency, which you can then activate the second Hell ability to teleport back. I had a little bit too much fun with this, as you can tell. One of Reaper's key mechanics is Death's Design, which can be applied by the abilities Shadow of Death and Whirl of Death, the single target and AoE versions. What his abilities do is that they mark a target with a Death's Design, and that lets you deal 10% more damage towards it. But also, if the target is killed before the time runs out, it will give you soul gauge. So even if you know you can't kill the target, keeping this up will let you deal 10% more damage towards it. This ability will be perfect for dungeon runs. Next up, we have the AoE combo Spinning Scythe and Nightmare Scythe. As you can see, I was a dumb idiot baby who completely forgot to put Nightmare Scythe on my hotbar and was very confused why there was no combo. This set is reliant on the soul gauge and are only able to be executed with these. When it comes to the 3, they all give a stack of Soul Reap, which is necessary to execute the next set of abilities. I will go into these after this, but Bloodstock is a solo target ability and Grim Swathe is a AoE ability that both grant 1 stack of Soul Reaper. The third ability is Gluttony, which can only be executed every 60 seconds, but it grants 2 stacks of Soul Reaper. It is treated like every other ability, where it hits the first enemy with the full potency and 25% less for all remaining ones. Now we get to the Soul Reaver abilities. Here we have Gibbet, Gallows, and Guillotine. Gibbet and Gallows are the only positional attacks, and also once used change Bloodstock into different abilities. They work in a rotation close to Dragoon. Once Gibbet is used, it changes Bloodstock to Unveiled Gallows, and once Gallows is used, it changes Bloodstock to Unveiled Gibbet. Guillotine does not activate a special Bloodstock since it is an AoE ability. These also charge the Shroud gauge by 10, which lets you summon your avatar. Now we get to the fun abilities. This is the Enshroud mechanic, where you let your idol take over and get access to a bunch of new attacks. In total, you get maximum stacks of Lemur Shroud, which is the cost for all of these attacks. This changes all 6 abilities of Bloodstock, Grimswath, Gluttony, Gibbet, and Gallows. To explain the Shroud mechanic, you gain 5 stacks of Lemur Shroud, and once they are used, they turn into Void Shrouds, which lets you utilize the Lemur abilities. They eat up your stacks until none are left. You can either use Void Reaping and Cross Reaping in a combo, or use Grim Reaping as an AoE. Once all Shroud stacks are used, the Enshroud effect ends. This is where the ability Communion comes in. As you can tell, if you follow the rotation, there are 5 Lemur Shrouds, and going through this leaves 1 Lemur Shroud left. This is where Communion comes in to be used, since it is a high potency attack that immediately ends Enshroud on use, which makes it a fantastic finisher attack for that phase. Now we get to Soul Slice and Soul Scythe, which are the solo target and AoE abilities that can be cast to immediately give 50 soul gauge. The only defensives that Reaper has is called Arcane Crest, which puts a shield on self and once absorbed grants HP restoration for 15 seconds to self and party members. Next up we have the ability Soul Sow that turns into Harvest Moon once executed. If Soul Sow is used mid-combat, it has a cast time of 5 seconds, but it is an instacast if used outside of battle. This makes this ability quite useful as an opener or as a mid-transition ability for fights. Once Soul Sow turns into Harvest Moon, it turns into a heavy potency attack. Lastly, we have Reaper's Immortal Sacrifice mechanic, which can be activated with Arcane Circle. This increases the damage dealt by 3% for self and all party members, and also puts Circle of Sacrifice to everyone. This allows you to gain a stack of Immortal Sacrifice when a weapon skill or spell is successfully hit with a max number of 8. These stacks are used for the ability Plentiful Harvest, which is a straight line attack. The potency is up with every stack of Immortal Sacrifice and also increases the Shroud gauge by 50. That already concludes all of Reaper's new abilities, and that makes both of the new classes covered. The first major change for Bard is that all songs now have a recast timer of 120 seconds, whereas the songs themselves are 45 seconds long. Along with that, using the songs also give you additional effects of Mage's coda, Army's coda, and Wanderer's coda. Along with that, Caustic Bite and Stormbite are now changed to have a duration of 45 seconds, which previously had been 30. When it comes to Bard's new abilities, the first one at level 82 is an upgrade to Quick Knock as Landon's Bite, which still has the previous effect. Blast Arrow is granted at level 86, which is the combo action for Apex Arrow, which delivers an attack to all enemies in a straight line. Finally, we have the level 90 ability, which is Radiant Finale. This is pretty much old Astra's Divination, which can be executed to gain a party-wide damage buff depending on how many codas you have. This can range from 2%, 4%, and 5% for 15 seconds. I was actually surprised to see that Machinist has gotten absolutely no change compared to all the other classes. With level, it gains a few more charges, but it could be that Machinist might get some changes once Endwalker comes around. Otherwise, here are all the new Machinist abilities. The first new one is Scattergun, which is a direct upgrade to Spread Shot at level 82. At level 86, the Queen receives a new ability known as Crown Collider. Just like most of Queen's abilities, the potency increases if the battery gauge exceeds the required amount at time of deployment. As the very last ability from Machinist, at level 90, they gain a Chainsaw, which is a high potency attack which is also a weapon skill, so it is able to be used with Reassemble, but this is pretty much all of Machinist's changes. Dancer actually received a slight change when it comes to its procs, and now when executing standard or technical step, it will also turn the AoE abilities into steps, which is slightly disorienting. Another big change is now to Flourish, as it no longer allows you to use all 4 abilities. Previously, you were able to execute both single target and both AoE abilities. Now you have to choose between the two. Instead of granting you 4 different buffs, you only get 2, Flourishing Symmetry and Flourishing Flow. This allows you to choose between Reverse Cascade or Rising Windwell and Fountain Fall or Blood Shower. Another change was made to Improvisation, which no longer raises your Esprit when used, but instead gives you Rising Rhythm, which can be used for improvised finish. The longer you dance, the more stacks you gain. It rises by 1 every 3 seconds, with its max stacks being 4. This can be used to create a barrier around self and party members, which can go up to 10% of maximum HP. Talana is a new ability at level 82 that can be executed after finishing technical step. While also dealing damage, it grants the standard finish buff and increases damage dealt by 5% for 60 seconds. At level 86, Dancer unlocks Fan Dance 4, which can only be executed with the effect of 4-fold Fan Dance, which is acquired by using Flourish. This means it can be activated every 60 seconds and delivers an attack to all the enemies in a cone before you. As Dancer's last ability at level 90, we have Starfall Dance, which can only be executed with Flourishing Starfall. This buff can be acquired by using Devilment, which has a cooldown timer of 120 seconds. That pretty much covers up all of Dancer's abilities, and then we are already finished with the range DPS. For Black Mage's first change, probably also the funniest, is that Sleep is finally removed as one of Black Mage's abilities. Next up, we have a change to Blizzard 2 and Fire 2, which grants Umbral Ice 3 and Astral Fire 3 instead of only 1 Umbral Ice and Astral Fire. Also, the levels for Blizzard 3 and Freeze are switched, giving Blizzard 3 at level 35 and Freeze at level 40. Enochian is also no longer an activatable ability. As Black Mage's first new set at level 82, both Fire 2 and Blizzard 2 are changed to High Fire 2 and High Blizzard 2. As Black Mage's level 86 ability, they get Amplifier, which grants a free Polyglot every 120 seconds. And lastly, Black Mage gains Paradox, a spell that can be used every time when Astral Fire 3 is swapped to Ice, or when Umbral Ice 3 has 3 Umbral Hearts swapped to Fire. Paradox also refreshes the duration of Astral Fire, and just like Fire has a chance to grant Firestarter. It also has no MP cost when next Fire 3 is cast. This already concludes Black Mage. Alright, I'm not even going the joke. Summoner is the third new hidden class they added with Endwalker. There are a bunch of new abilities and most of them are non-assignable, so we'll go through these by categorizing them by summon. First of all, a bunch of abilities for Summoner were removed. Bio, Bio 2, Bio 3, Miasma, Miasma 2, Aegiosold, Bane, and Kindle, Aether Pact, Dreadworm Trance, and every single pet action. But don't let that deceive you. Summoner has the least amount of buttons from any classes, but this doesn't mean it's not busy. It received a huge rework in both its pet and summon system, and personally feels way smoother and much more fun to play. Let's get into the first set of abilities that change with every summon, which are Ruin 3 and Tri-Disaster. Both of them only change in Phoenix and Bahamut phases. Then we have Gemshine and Precious Brilliance, which only transform during Ifrit, Garuda, and Titan phase. Then lastly, we have Astral Flow, which changes with every single summon. Now we'll explain every other phase except for Phoenix, since it's the only one that hasn't really changed. The first one will always be Summon Bahamut, which is the first biggest change that you no longer need to manually enter Dreadworm Trance to summon Bahamut separately, as it is its own summon now. Bahamut will also automatically cast Wormwave. Ruin 3 is changed to Astral Impulse, and Tri-Disaster is changed to Astral Fire, the AoE attack for Bahamut. Other than that, Enkindle Bahamut and Death Flare can be executed like usual. Bahamut phase also grants Ruby Arcanum, Topaz Arcanum, and Emerald Arcanum, which allows to summon Ifrit, Titan, and Garuda. Once Ifrit is summoned, Ifrit will cast Inferno, and Astral Flow is replaced by Crimson Cyclone, which is a gap closer while damaging the targets and everyone near it. Once used, it changes to Crimson Strike that also deals follow-up area damage. At the same time, when summoned, you are granted 2 stacks of Fire Attunement, which can be used by the solo target ability Ruby Right and AoE ability Ruby Catastrophe, both consuming 1 stack each. Once used up, the Ifrit phase will end. Once Titan is summoned, he casts Irvin Fury and deals damage to all enemies around him. It also grants 4 stacks of Earth Attunement, which turns Gemshine and Precious Brilliance into Topaz Right and Topaz Catastrophe. Executing Topaz Right or Catastrophe will grant you Titan's favor, and changes Astral Flow into Mountain Breaker, which can be changed with Topaz actions. Once all 4 stacks are used, Titan phase is over. Last but not least, we have the Garuda summon, which executes Aerial Blast and grants 4 stacks of Wind Attunement. This will turn Gemshine and Precious Brilliance into Emerald Right and Emerald Catastrophe. Once Garuda is summoned, Slipstream can be immediately cast with Astral Flow, to which Emerald Right can be cast 4 times before the phase ends. That pretty much summons up all the summons. There are also 2 new abilities added, Radiant Aegis and Searing Light. Radiant Aegis is an ability that has 2 charges, and it can be cast to create a barrier of 20% maximum HP for the party, while Searing Light is the new version of Aether Pact, which grants a 3% damage buff to all party members for 30 seconds. Both are carbuncle actions and can only be executed when it is out. These are all of Summoner's changes. Obviously, I might have missed some things, or some things might also be changed, but personally, it's incredibly fun to try and feel smooth. And god, all the abilities are so blinding. As well as carbuncle actions do not clip anymore. Now we're finally at the very last class. Red Mage has gotten a big revamp in its system, and that is that the mana gauge only takes 50 to do a full melee combo now. This also means that all the gauge gain is nerfed, but makes the number pretty much specific. Also, engagement's level was reduced quite a bit to level 40 from its previous 72 to be, you know, along with displacement. Also, displacement, engagement, and acceleration gain a 2nd stack. For Red Mage's new abilities, we have Ver Thunder and Ver Arrow 3, which are both direct upgrades to Ver Thunder and Ver Arrow 2. At level 86, Red Mage gets Magic Barrier, which gives the entire party a magic damage reduction by 10% and a HP recovery by 5%. At level 90, Red Mage gets its new ability Resolution, which can be executed after successfully using Scourge and is an attack that goes in a straight line. It also looks really cool. This is the end of all class coverage. Please be reminded that all of this could very much still change, and I could also have explained most of this inaccurately. I have definitely tried to the best of my ability, and hope I have covered it in a way that makes it understandable. It took me 10,000 words to explain all of this, but we're now at the home stretch. This is a big spoiler warning to the Tower of Zot. If you wish to experience this dungeon by yourself without knowing the mechanics, then please skip ahead to the timestamp of the interview with Naoki Yoshida. I was fortunate enough to find other participants of the media tour who wished to run it with me, obviously as warrior, and not knowing what I was doing. I very much enjoyed this dungeon, and was very excited to be able to learn the mechanics with my party members. The bosses for this dungeon are the Maga Sisters, starting with the first boss, which is Mindaruva, who actually had pretty intense AoEs, and loaded mechanics that would move to a set marker, which can be avoided by reading the charge skill. You can see I was an idiot who tried to walk there because I didn't know what to do. While going through this dungeon, I noticed how fleshy it was. It felt kind of weird, but the pulls were pretty fine, with this weird new enemy that looks like a live pudding. Then we approached the second boss, Sandaruba, who actually had mechanics that made me fall in love with the fight, especially the temporal displacement mechanic, where you really didn't have to do much. Then, halfway into the fight, she turns everyone into herself and starts emoting. It's pretty rude. Once done with the fight, we approach the third and final boss, starting with Cinderuva. I had no idea who the Mag Sisters were, since I never finished Final Fantasy X, but if you know them, you should pretty much expect what the fight was going to be like, as they are very deceptive. We actually didn't do the mechanics how it was supposed to be done, and brute forced it, but yeah, I have fun figuring it out. This is actually the biggest thing that has happened to me when it comes to the media tour, and it took me a lot to not mention this. I never in a million years thought I would be able to interview the producer of Final Fantasy XIV. I was joined by my fellow creator Meoni, who was a delight to have as a partner. You guys can find all of Meoni's info in the description because they also made a video on this. Since the entire interview lasted an hour, most of the time was taken by the back and forth translation. This was all done by the amazing Hyder, who was supported by Ichitaro and Mizuho. But to make it more digestible, I added the translation as written text over Yoshida-san's footage. I hope you enjoy it!
Hi, nice to meet you. まずはファイナルファンタジー14エンドウォーカーのメディアツアーにご参加いただきありがとうございます。そして、インタビューの方にも、ご参加くださり、とても楽しみにしてました。よろしくお願いします。これがですね、僕にとってとてつもなく長くてハードだったインタビュースロットの、32スロットあったんですけど、ついにこれがラストです。なので、ぜひ、皆さんもリラックスして、14のことはもちろん、14以外のゲーム全体のことでもいいですし、プライベートのことでもいいです。リラックスしていろいろ質問していただければと思います。それではよろしくお願いします。
I guess I'm going to start off with a very, with a rather simple question that I was very curious about. Recently, Final Fantasy XIV has gotten a huge surge of attention and gained more fans and players, especially from the West. A lot of people mention how much they love the team, especially after the heart-wrenching moments from FanFest that solidified your dedication and love to this game. How has this love and support affected you and the team working on the game?
まず、やっぱり今、確かに非常に多くのプレイヤーの方に新たにね、ファイナルファンタジー14遊んでもらってますけど、まあ何よりやっぱり嬉しいのは、運営というか一番最初のローンチから11年、ARR からは8年経って、まずやっぱりプレイヤーコミュニティ、既存のベテランプレイヤーたちがそういった新しいプレイヤーたちをすごく歓迎して、すごくこう自分の友達や家族が増えたかのようにこう接してくれてるっていうのがまずとても嬉しいです。そういうコミュニティを作ってこれた、一緒に歩んでこれたっていうことがとても嬉しいです。そして、僕らがやってきたこの努力っていうのがやっぱり ARR から8年経って、普通だったらオールドゲームって言われてもおかしくない。なのにフレッシュな気持ちで続々と新しいプレイヤーが遊び始めてくれるっていうこと自体は僕らの、常にやってきた努力っていうのが報われているとも思うので、僕もそうだし開発チームもとてもモチベーションになってるし、とても嬉しく思ってます。
So first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to play the media tour. It was honestly very, very impressive. One thing that I found most impressive was Sage, personally, but I have a bit of a question on my mind. With the amount of extensive shield abilities on show, many I talked to who saw the job action trailer were kind of worried that with Sage's flashy showcasing, scholars might feel left out in this. So what efforts are being made to bring Scholar in line competitively alongside Sage with its range of abilities?
まずそれについてはちょっと謝った方がいいかなと思ってるんですけど、 そもそもこのメディアツアースタートの前にやったプロデューサーレターライブの中で、いろんなジョブについてこう話していく中で、その学者について話す時間が吉田はすごい短かったと。これがショックだと、悲しいっていうところからこの雰囲気が始まってるのは本当にごめんなさい、僕のせいだと思います。これまでやっぱりこういうその拡張のタイミングの、メディアツアーの中での各ジョブについてのお話って、これまでできる限り僕が話すのはアクションの中身ではなくて、できるだけコンセプトにしていこうっていうふうに決めてました。そして今回も、それに従ってお話をしました。でそれはなぜかというと、やっぱりメディアツアーをやってこうメディアの皆さんや、インフルエンサーの皆さんが実際こうハンズオンして、スキルの中身を見てプレイヤーの皆さんに詳しい情報を出すために、集まって時間を作ってもらってるので、僕が全部プロデューサーレターライブで、例えば学者にはこのアクションが追加されて、バリアの範囲はこれぐらいで、バリアのそのバリア量はこれぐらいで、こんなに強力なスペルがっていう話をしてしまうと、メディアインフルエンサーの皆さんの仕事を奪ってしまうと思ってたので、できるだけそれはやらないようにしようって考えてました。もう一個の理由としては、やっぱ僕がその数字まで含めてこうアクションの中身の説明を詳しくしてしまうと、やっぱ僕自分の言葉がすごく力を持っているのを知ってるので、この先もやっぱりまだジョブ調整続いているので、それによってもしプロデューサーレターライブで話した内容から数字やその威力が変更になった場合に、なんだよこう言ったじゃないか、なんでこんなにこう例えば弱くなってるんだとかっていう話がどうしてもこうネガティブに働いてしまうので、できるだけ中身に関して詳しく説明するのをやめるっていうことをここまでやってきました。で結果じゃあもうちょっとなんかこうコンセプトについて話せばよかったんじゃないってなるんですけど、学者は今回バリアヒーラーとして明確に立ち位置がピュアヒーラーバリアヒーラーって分け方をした時に、もうバリアヒーラーの基本になるものを全て揃えてある。つまりこれまでの学者のプレイスタイルをそのまま強く不満っていう点があまりないジョブなので、もちろん新しい攻撃魔法も取得しているし、新しい範囲攻撃に関してもそうで、当然新しい強力なバリアヒーラーも持ってるし、強力な軽減効果のあるアビリティも手に入れてるので、ただコンセプトっていう意味では、フェアリーの挙動がちょっと一部不満があるっていう部分は分かっていて、そこには少し手は入れたんですけど、コンセプトが大きく変わってない。なのでさっきの理屈で言えば話すことがあまりないっていう状態だったので、結果話す時間が短くなってしまったっていうのが、まずちょっと皆さんを不安にさせてしまったんだと思います。なのでぜひ伝えてあげてください。安心してくださいと伝えてください。
On the hands-on event, we got to look at some of the new areas, specifically a favorite of mine being Garlemald, where you can feel the destruction and grief in the area. You can tell just what happened by the melancholy. While obviously it is tied to lore, I am more interested in the design choices and decisions. Could we have a rundown or of how it came to be and what goes behind designing it?
これまで1.0 を含めてファイナルファンタジー14の中にはそのガレマール帝国ってかなり頻度が高く登場してきたと思います。ただし皆さんが見てきたもしくは出会ってきたのは、例えば将軍だったりその軍団長だったり、あとは兵士にももちろん合ってるけどみんなマスクしてるし、もしかすると彼らは単純なやっぱりモンスターのように思えてるだろうなっていうふうに思います。それはもちろんそう。ただ今回帝国に支配された植民地へ行くのではなくて、帝国特に首都ガレマルドそのものに行くことになる。つまり今回描いているのは兵士としての帝国ではなくて帝国民、例えばそれがガレアン人であったりガレアン族だったり、彼らにも生活があり、彼らの普段の生活っていうのが垣間見えるように、彼らも実は我々と同じ 人間なんだっていうところにすごい注意して街を作ってもらってます。その上で破壊してるんですけどね。だからこうそのガレマルドの壊れた都市の中に公園があって、滑り台があったりしてます。きっと平和だったというか、この破壊に至るまでにはきっと子どもたち、そのガレアン人の子どもたちがきっとここで遊んでたんだろうなみたいな、そういう意味だと本当に物悲しいとは思いますけど、もともとの生活っていうのがよく見えるようにかなり注意して作られたエリアになってます。ちょっとこれはアシエンに似てるかなとも思っていて、これまでパッチ 4.x シリーズまでは皆さんちょっとこうアシエンがよくわからない、こいつらなんか難しいことばっかり言ってるし、マスクいつもつけてるからよくわからないし、もうちょっとアシエンはいいよっていう雰囲気だったのが、やっぱりシャドーブリンガーズを経てエメトセルクと一緒に旅をしてエメトセルクと会話をして、彼が何を考えているのかっていうのを知ることによって、エメトセルク、そのアシエンっていうその名前ではなくて、その古代人としての顔が見えてきたと思うんですけど、ちょっとそういうニュアンスに近いと思います、ガレマルドは。
I've got a small question here. During a demo, I was playing around with a lot of the menus, as you would, having a look around, and I noticed that there's a new achievement panel, which has completely changed. Can you elaborate on anything about that, or any plans to what it looked like is to track and both incentivize achievement hunting?
実はこのアチーブメントの回収っていうのは、僕が実は 2,3 年かけてUI チームだったりアチーブメント担当セクションにずっとお願いし続けてきた、ことになります。でやっぱり ARR を作った時には相当厳しいスケジュールの中でかなり急いで作ったものでもあるので、どうしてもリスト的なものになってしまってる。ただ本来 MMORPG におけるアチーブメントっていうのは大きなコンテンツの一つでもあるっていうふうに考えてます。なのでアチーブメントをもっと身近なもの、アチーブメントリストというかアチーブメントがもっとみんなの生活、14の中での生活で身近なものになることによって目的にもなると目標や目的になると思っていて、それを毎日開くことによって、もうちょっとで達成できそうなものあるじゃんとか、もっと身近なものにしたいっていうのがまず一つの理由です。でもう一個はやっぱり身近っていうところにつながってきてるんですけど、長い期間プレーをしてきた皆さんの足跡であり、日記でもあり、手帳でもあると思ってる。つまり開けば旅の思い出が詰まってるものなので、今回デザインをあえてその手帳風、日記風にしてるのは、皆さんが光の戦士として冒険してきたその実績がここに記録されてますよっていう意味を込めて、そういうデザインにしてあります。
Since the announcement for Island Sanctuary, there has been a lot of mystery surrounding this content. Are there any new details you can share about it?
まず、発表した時にちょっとびっくりしたんですけど、ここまでプレイヤーの皆さんがすごく興味を持ち盛り上がってくれるとはちょっと正直思ってなかったっていうのがまず一つです。なのであまりコンテンツのイメージに対して誤解が生まれるような中途半端な情報を出さない方がいいだろう。なのでちゃんと例えば実機だったりスクリーンショットで遊び方とかコンセプトをより詳しく紹介できるタイミングが来るまで、待った方がいいだろうなって思ってるのが、それ以降のアナウンスをあんまりしてない理由ですね。で最初に言っておきたいのが、14の中に動物の森ができるとは思ってほしくない。なぜなら動物の森は長年かけて積み上げてきて、あれだけのことができて一つのゲームなので、あれと全く同じものが14に来るんじゃないかと思われると僕たちは辛い。それだけちょっと最初に言っておきます。じゃあざっくりだけどもう少しインフォメーションは出しておきます。無人島探索に関しては、非常に大きなコンテンツでパッチ 6.x シリーズからスタートします。で、パッチ 6.x シリーズを通じてアップデートも常に行われていく、かなり大型のコンテンツになってます。でプレイヤー一人一人に、まさに無人島が一つ与えられるので、 この無人島に、例えばどんな建物を建てるのかとか、その材料をどうやって集めてこようとか、ミニオンを放し飼いにしたりとか、そういう誰かと競わなきゃいけないとか、アラガントームストーンが手に入るから毎週やらなきゃいけないとか、そういったものから逃れた、自分だけの島を作りましょうっていうのが大きなコンセプトになってます。だからものすごい強力な武器が手に入るわけでもないし、レイドが大好きって人にとっては全然プレイしないものになるかもしれない。でもそれでいいと思っていて、その14の中でさらにリラックスできる場所があって、友達を呼んで一緒にチャットをするのでもいいし、相手の島に遊びに行ってチャットをするんでもいい、そんな風に好きなその作物を育てたり動物を育てたり、そんな感じのイメージでいてください。なのでハウジングは家と庭と家具にもうすごいフォーカスしてるコンテンツだと思うんですけど、無人島探査がもう一個一段上、もうちょっと広い視点で遊ぶみたいなイメージですね。今回お話しできるのはこれぐらいかな。
Many players, including myself, will be fairly happy to see the new job artifact gear at level 90, with Hrothgar and Vieira being able to use the headpieces on the majority of it. Are there any plans to extend the amount of hairstyles available to both Hrothgar and Vieira? And is there any chance that we could not have to spend money to get a Fantasia to change Hrothgar hairstyles?
まずロスガルのその仕様の特徴から言うと、ヘアスタイルと顔っていうのが1対1で作られてる。その代わりユニークなのが、ロスガルなので、ちょっとそれ自体の根本の仕様を大きく変えるっていうのはちょっと難しいので、ちょっと一旦それはそういうものだと思ってください。ただし、現在実はシステムの変更をすごく一生懸命やっていて、種類はめちゃくちゃ増えるとは言わないですけど、一つのフェイスパターンに一つの髪型ではなくて、一つのフェイスパターンに複数の髪型を持てるように今、作業をしてます。そしてビエラに対しての新しい髪型の追加等に関しても今回結構仕様を、調整して 6.0 のタイミングから髪型が増えます。でロスガルはちょっと時間がかかるので、パッチ 6.1 からになる予定です。いずれにせよ2つの、レースに関しても、かなりキャラクターチームが頑張ってくれて髪型や装備を増やす準備を今してますので、もう少しお待ちください。 6.0 と 6.1 からそれが始まることになります。
You guys have previously mentioned that you're working to remove gender-locked outfits. While it's understandable that this process takes time and probably also on the back burner, I was curious about outfits that have very different designs per gender. For example, the Neo-Ishgardian gear is drastically different from female and male character models, and some would like the ability to choose between the versions of the armor, regardless of gender of their character, to allow them to express their character more. Are there any plans to ever put in an option for that, and would you mind sharing a bit of the thought process behind designing armors like that?
まずいろんな、過去に出した装備でもその性別対応をなくす努力をしていってるのは多分分かってもらえてるんじゃないかなと思うけど、どうですか？少しずつですけど増やしてはいってるつもりです。
I feel like a lot of people are very positive when it comes to responses, especially when they were able to wear the different outfits for the wedding, especially. I know a lot of people were very happy about that. It's not more like that we didn't notice it. It was more the question of because there's so intricate different designs between female and male, that some like one version better than the other and can't use that version.
それは理解してるんですよ。できるだけもちろんそうしてあげたいっていう思いはあります。ただ僕らはやっぱり1パッチの間に作れるギアの数っていうのが決まっているので、しかも皆さんクオリティが高いギアを求めるので、やっぱり同じデザインに見えるかもしれないけど、これだけ種族があるものに対して体型ごとに当然綺麗に装備できるように作らなきゃいけないので、 できる限りそうはしていきたい。もちろんいろんな価値観もあるし、なんだけどなんて言うんだろう、今まで例えば1パッチの間に5つのユニークなそのデザインを入れて実装できてたものが2個になってしまったりする可能性がある。なので僕らはどうしてもこう慎重にその割合とか数をコントロールしていかざるを得ないので、できるだけ努力はする、努力もしてるつもりだけど 100% 満たせるかっていうふうに聞かれてしまうとちょっと辛いです。ベストは尽くします。だからデザインチームもすごくそういうリクエストも当然分かった上で限られたリソースの中でこう一生懸命どっちにもできるだけ対応してどっちのいろんな人に喜んでもらえるようにデザインワークをしているので、やっぱりそこもベストを尽くすとしかちょっと言えないな。
Personally, I know and understand the design and how much work goes into it. There's just always a lot of questions coming from people who play the game, and especially also with the Viera and Hrothgar situation, I can't imagine it being very easy for the design team as well.
いえ、でも本当皆さんにも努力を続けるって言ってたよってぜひ伝えてあげてください。
During the demo, we got to play the wonderful Tower of Zot 4-player dungeon. This was incredibly fun to do with Truss, in my opinion, this time around, especially with Alice and Anu, Red Mage abilities, and Alphino as Sage. Are there any plans then to extend Truss to even bigger places in the future, such as Alliance raids?
アライアンスレイドはすごいですね。23人の NPC がいるってことですよね。アライアンスレイドは行き過ぎというか人数多すぎにしても、今回 6.0 の開発期間の中で、トラストシステムの、内部的な拡張というのを非常に丁寧にやってきました。でこれまではやっぱり 5.0 で開発した今の、これまでのトラストシステムっていうのは非常に実装スクリプトを組む、ガンビットを組む、 AI を組むっていうところが非常に難易度が高くて、本当にスキルの高いゲームデザイナーじゃないと扱えないっていう状態でした。で今回それらを良い意味で汎用化し、さらにパワーアップさせることで多くのゲームデザイナー、開発チーム内の多くのゲームデザイナーがトラストシステムを使えるようになりました。で今回 6.0 ではいろいろ新しいコンテンツを作らなければいけなかったので、その 6.0 の中に登場してくるインスタンスダンジョン以外の例えば過去のコンテンツとかにはトラストシステム対応できてないですけど、もう一個スポイラーになるのでメディアツアーには入ってない新しいそのトラストの可能性みたいなのが 6.0 で見れるシーンがあります。今後いろんなことにまたこう発展していけるんじゃないかなと思ってるので、ぜひその 6.0 でのトラストシステムの進化を見てちょっと今後に期待してもらえると嬉しいです。
Oh, that's very exciting to hear. Thank you very much.
いやとても楽しかったです。ありがとうございます。ちょっと今回はね世界中のパンデミックがあって僕ももう2年ぐらい海外に行けてないんですけど、もう少しでまた日常がちゃんと戻ってくると思うので、次の機会ではフェイストゥフェイスで皆さんとまたお話できるのを楽しみにしてます。
Hey, this is Future Shen here. I am currently finishing up editing this video, and obviously I'm showing off the areas next with a small B-roll and some of the Viera stuff. This will not take too long, unfortunately, but this project has been very draining, but it's been amazing, and I want to thank everybody who is watching this, everybody who has enjoyed my 14 content, and has gotten me this far. It's truly something amazing that I got to take part of. And I hope that even though I am not the best at conveying information, I was able to bring some form of information or entertainment into it, because I put way too much effort into this. It is currently 9:27 a.m. It is actually 5 hours. Well, 4.5 hours before the embargo lifts. I still have to render the video and upload it and make a thumbnail and do the description. So if you see this in time, just know that this was recorded me having worked for a really long time. But yeah, just putting this in raw, no editing. Again, thank you. I'm very excited for Endwalker because I will become a full-time 14 creator again. This game means a lot to me, and it's not gonna stop now. Alright, I'm gonna stop being sappy and let you guys have the Arios and some of the Bunnyboys. I need sleep. Here we are at the very last part of the video. Here are just a few little things that I thought would be interesting to look at for Bunnyboys. They are allowed to wear the Reaper hat, which looks really, really cute. Then I did record some emotes, but I am slowly running out of time, so I'm just going to show a few of them. These boys are wonderful and totally anime protagonists with the way that they sound. But yeah, other than that, thank you so much for watching the video, and have a good night or day or wherever you live, whatever.